Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our domain analytics session. So, today's focus would be on security analysis. Now, security analytics can mean a whole lot of things, but our focus would primarily be on financial securities. All right. So, we'll take a look at what we mean by financial securities. Now, in the broad sense of word, financial securities mean any security that can be exchanged in for finance, like that can be exchanged for money. So they are tradable. They are basically a financial instrument. So financial securities are financial instruments. So we are taking some sort of a token, for example, right? We are taking some sort of fungible and tradable token. So we are taking a look at fungible and tradable tokens. So these tokens can be used. These tokens can be used in exchange for money. And you can always, for example, you can always negotiate some price. And the most important part about these tokens is that they hold some monetary value. Okay. So what can be considered as financial securities? You have, ownership within a publicly traded corporation via their stocks. So this is one example. So here again, you have the stock market. We have our national stock exchange. Within that stock exchange, people are always buying and selling stocks. Now, what these stocks represent are part ownership. Part ownership within that specific company, whatever company it may be. You may be buying stocks in a company that has, a lot of standing. For example, you're taking a look at any one of India's big industries like Tata Industries, or you're taking a look at Reliance or Airtel. If you buy stocks in those companies, or you can also buy in petty stocks in smaller companies that are listed. You are also looking at, you're also looking at, what do you call it? Newly traded companies. For example, recently you had LIC who did their IPO. IPO is initial public offering, their first offering to a stock. Okay, so you have those people doing their IPO, and if you purchase stock in that, you again become part owner of that company. Of course, that part is really small for the average person who is investing, but it's a part nonetheless. Then it could be a creditor relationship with the government body. So you have governments issuing bonds, people buying up those bonds, and government using those bonds as some form of investment in public works. Okay. So using those investments, the government will try to earn money, right? They will try to have more and more people earn money. For example, you have bonds being offered, and those bonds are then used towards developing roads. When you're developing these roads, people are getting their livelihood. As such, there is a circulation of money going on. So that is one way. And then you have right to ownership of an option. So you are given an option and you have the ownership for that. Okay. So now we'll take a look at types of securities. You have equity security. Equity security represents ownership interests held by shareholders within an organization. Okay. This is the basis for a this is the basis for capital stock. Okay. So if you have equity stocks within a company, you are not entitled to regular payments, but you do receive some dividends, which are profit from the capital gains when they have sold the securities. Now, these capital gains are the profits with the increase in price of shares. Okay. But the main important part is that most of these shareholders would have some sort of voting right to that company. Okay. And then you have debt securities. Okay. Then you have debt security. Now, debt security represents money that has to be paid back within a certain sum, within a certain time frame for a loan. Okay, so this is like a loan. These include government bonds. Okay, so these bonds, they can be used towards public works, and then after being used towards public work, they are finally paid back over time. Okay, so they usually have a fixed term. And then you finally have what we call as hybrid securities. Now, these securities combine the features of these two securities. So that means you have some sort of ownership stake as well as some sort of debt stake. Okay. And then finally, recently we've had the rise in NFT, non fungible tokens. So these tokens are basically some sort of financial value. You have some images, etc., and people are buying them up for money. Okay, so that is the different types of security. Now let's move forward. So let's look at the agenda for this program. We'll be taking a look at applications. Applications of security analysis within these financial securities. Okay, so that is one thing we'll be taking a look at. Then we'll be understanding CRISP MLQ methodology. Then we'll take a look at data pre-processing and exploratory data analysis. And then we'll spend some time on a few machine learning algorithms. And these algorithms would be K mean clustering, K nearest neighbor, decision tree, linear regression, and multi-layer perceptron. Okay. So now, before we move forward, I think it is important to cover what is AI and ML. So ML refers to machine learning. So machine learning, this is the step of teaching a machine to behave like human. To teach human behavior to a machine. Now, this concept has been around for a long time. The term AI, artificial intelligence, was coined in the 1950s. In machine learning, currently is becoming more and more important because there has been an exponential growth in data. Okay. So you have this data and it has grown exponentially. So with this, you have more and more data to work with. At the same time, you have computers that are faster, more efficient, and are able to handle more and more data. So you have a combination of these two factors that has led to the rise in usage of machine learning. All right. So now you have data from different sources. You have the stock exchanges. You have, increased use in social media. You have an increased, people are able to now predict the sentiment of the sentiments of users, which can affect investment values. Investment values means the money you have invested in. Okay. So now think about it this way. Now, if you're familiar with Elon Musk, you must have seen that Elon Musk is very active on Twitter. And because he is very active on Twitter, he is now able to manipulate the price of his companies like Tesla based on his tweets. Based on his tweets, he can artificially pump up the price. All right. And at the same time, if he says something wrong, it can lead to issues for him, which might reduce the which might reduce how much price he is able to charge to people. Okay. So that is where social media is becoming more and more important. All right. So you have so we can use this for financial analysis and prediction. So now you have bunch of different data. You just don't have simple numbers on a screen that you're looking at. You have different types of data that can affect stock price. Okay. So now you have ML models working with more and more complex problems. So the complexity of the problems these ML algorithms are able to solve has also increased massively. And now they are also able to process huge data. So we are no longer limited by the amount of data available to us. Even if it's a lot of data, we can, process it very well. So this has allowed us to use ML models in selection of securities and portfolios. Okay. So you are able to now use these ML models with securities and portfolio. And now what you can do is you can also do portfolio optimization. So you are able to optimize your portfolio, which result in increased returns and they are able to do it with a higher accuracy. The accuracy rate has also gone up. So that is where ML is coming into picture with regards to stock price prediction, not just stock price, basically financial securities prediction. So then you have AI. What is AI? AI is artificial intelligence. All right. So AI is basically not just teaching machine to think to get patterns out like a human. This is basically replication of human brain. So in our brain, we have something called neurons. These neurons are the thinking part of the brain. Anytime you are making any decision, it will involve these neurons. Okay. So because it is able to involve these neurons, we are able to make faster decisions. We have billions and billions of neurons that are sending signals to our entire body on what to do. And these signals are in form of electric signals, and they are always traveling very fast throughout our body. That's why we have something we called as instinct. Okay. So what the goal of AI is, it is to create systems that function intelligently that can function intelligently and independently. This is the main part. The independence and the intelligence is what set this apart. That means now if you have some work, your machine learning algorithm should be able to perform that work independently without having to worry about, you can have some sort of faith in your machine learning algorithm that it will be able to adapt to the changes better. So here we are doing two types of problem solving. We are doing classification and regression. All right. So classification deals with data that is in categories, and this deals with data that is in numeric form. So in classification, what you're essentially doing is you're trying to predict under which category will a certain algorithm fall in. And based off of that, you can group them together and you're making some predictions. And in machine learning, in regression, you're doing prediction. This regression can also be called as, this is not called as regression actually. Regression is part of prediction. So it should be prediction. So this prediction is used as, to predict the numeric outcome. In both of these models, you are making some sort of, you're trying to understand what is happening in the data. So in both these models, you'll either be working with classification or you'll be working with prediction data. Prediction data is numeric data. Okay. So that is AI and ML. Now we'll focus on our applications. So the three main applications that we'll be focusing on will be called portfolio management, money laundering detection, and investment security. So first, let's take a look at portfolio management. So portfolio management is the art and science of selecting and overseeing a group of investments. Okay. So these, you have a whole group of investments. You just don't have a single investment. For example, you have a portfolio where you have invested in 20 different companies. You are working with a portfolio management company and you are investing in 20 different companies. The goal of that company would be to maximize your return. Okay. You would give them some objective that this is what I want, that this I am willing to take this much risk. You'll set some values, and based on those values they will make investments on your behalf, and based off of that investment you will get some return. Okay, so that is portfolio management. So in portfolio management we have asset allocation. Now every person will have some sort of limited asset. Nobody has unlimited assets. Okay, so these can generally mean stocks or bonds or certificates of deposits or other alternative investments such as real estate, commodities, or derivatives. Now, it is important that you know a person's portfolio is properly managed. So, using machine learning and data analytics, we can use market research. We can do data analytics. Okay. So what we can do is we can get a signal on price movement. So maybe according to our algorithm, a company's stock price is expected to decrease in the future. So here you're risking losing money. Okay. So here you're risking losing money. So in order to avoid that, we can disinvest in that company. Okay. So you have, let's say, for example, you have data for Dow Jones. Dow Jones is the American Stock Exchange. So you have data for Dow Jones. It is similar to Sensex. So here, what will happen is you notice that a certain company, let's say, for example, we recently had Blizzard Gaming. Now, what happened with Blizzard Gaming was there was some controversial news that came out regarding the CEO of the company, that he had made some unwanted statements and everything. So what happened was their stocks had crashed badly. So they were, losing a lot of money. So here, if we take a look at it, so here we go. So this is their 6-month stock price. You can see that their stock price has dropped 6% in the last 6 months. If we go back to the last month, their prices are recovering now. But here you can notice that there were time frames where this stock price was crashing badly. If we go back to 1 year, now here you might notice the point I was trying to make. Here around November, for a few months, their stock price crashed dramatically. Now, if you are a investor, he would not want this scenario. So using ML algorithms, we can predict this. So here you can notice that the high price was 92 and at the lowest it was 56. So that is a drop of almost $40. And if you have invested 10,000 stocks at $92, you're standing to lose around 4 lakh USD in losses. You're facing 4 lakh USD in losses. Okay. So here, anybody who was proficient with machine learning, they could have seen it coming. And how could they have seen this coming? You had a lot of social media approach regarding the CEO of the company. You had a lot of social media approach. Okay. So you had the CEO of the company being involved in a lot of harassment and abuse related cases. So a lot of people were accusing him of harassment and abuse. So because of that, the company's price was expected to go down, and it did. So if somebody was proficient with understanding social media, if somebody was proficient with analyzing social media, they would have been able to, predict this downfall, and they would have been able to disinvest. At the same time, if somebody was interested in buying their stocks, this time would have been almost perfect, because here the stock price was around 56, the lowest it has been in the past year. So over time, of course, it took a few months. Here you have November 21 and here you have March 22. So the stock price started going up closer to March than it did to November. So maybe around January, February. So maybe after 2-3 months, it started going up, but it did go up. So if somebody had invested stocks around this time, they would have been golden. They would have been making around 80 bucks an hour. So that is a profit of almost $24 per share. So the more you invest, the more profit you make. So that is one use of AI and ML. Okay. Similarly, you can also use it in, so now you have hedge funds, companies that are investing in, that are handling your portfolios. So they have now started to use machine learning for asset allocation. They're using it for portfolio optimization. And they're using it for better returns than ever. So companies are now using existing data. They are using the internet, the data generated from internet, from social media, to make these predictions. Okay. So that is one way. Then you have money laundering. Now, money laundering is very common. Money laundering is, in broad terms, way of whitewashing your money. Okay. So for example, you have drug trafficking, you have corruption, you have embezzlement, you can also have illegal gambling, illegal trading. You have a lot of ways to predict. You have a lot of ways in which you can do money laundering. Now, like, have you ever went to a fancy restaurant and you notice it is always empty? And but how is that restaurant open year after year after year if it is making barely any sort of footfalls? Well, that is where money laundering comes in. Okay. So now you have companies and government agencies that are focused on protecting, on preventing this money laundering. Okay. So this money laundering, of course, it is illegal money. So that means it was generated from an illegal source. So now you have companies who are primarily focused on making sure that nobody is involved in money laundering. Okay. So previously it was very difficult to detect money laundering. Okay, it was extremely difficult. Like, you know, you had to look at every single transaction by your own hand. But now that has started to change with the increased use of money laundering, with the increased use of AI and ML. Okay. Now, because there is such an exponential growth in every aspect of human life in terms of data, we have to, you know, ensure that these illegal activities are also being curbed. They are also not growing exponentially, because at the end of the day, illegal money is money that is stolen from the public. Okay. So what happens is, you have a bank. Let's say you have Bank of America. Okay. So what they'll do is, they'll build AI and ML applications. Now these applications, they would what they would do is they would analyze customer transaction behavior. So humans as a species are a very habitual. We are very habitual. We are creatures of our habit. Okay. So over time, you also will notice that you would do the same things every day. You would be buying same things, similar things. You would be um, going to the same places or similar places. Okay, not always exactly the same place. The kind of food you eat, the kind of music you listen, all these things would be very similar. Okay. So now what this application would do is it would predict future transactions. So you will make some transactions, and over time, as you keep making transaction, your machine learning algorithm will pick up those, will start predicting those future transactions, and then it will start flagging any suspicious transactions. Now you are making some transactions, and every now and then you do something that you don't do normally. Maybe you're transferring a huge amount of money to someone. So anytime you do that, you might be getting a call from your bank. Your bank might be calling that, saying that, hey, our records show that today your average daily spend is, let's say, 1500 rupees, but today you transferred 1.5 lakh. Okay, so they will ask you that, hey, is this you? They will verify that information with you because on their system this has been flagged. All right, so over time they will be noticing these patterns within, they will be noticing these patterns within everyone's spending habits. Okay, so while noticing these patterns, they are, trying to make suspicious transactions less. So now how this can be used in um, machine learn, how this can be used in our use case. Okay, so for example, let's say you have a, a restaurant, a restaurant that looks very expensive, but it has barely any sort of investments, barely any sort of, users are coming here. Nobody is coming there, nobody is going there. You went once with your friends and you found you like the food, but every time you go it is empty. Every single time it is empty. So your ML models, they will take a look at your spending, and they will also take a look at the restaurant, and they will notice that you are going there regularly, but this restaurant does not have a lot of online business. It does not have a lot of online transactions. Okay, so they will flag this, and then it will be up to the bank to conduct further investigation. Okay, so they can also track suspicious transactions. Now with the increase in ML, it has become easier to flag these transactions. Okay, so previously you would have to go through every person's transaction history. Now you can use this. You can also monitor intricate patterns. You can notice the smallest changes in the patterns of a person. Now these changes necessarily don't have to be bad. So if you were previously working somewhere and your salary was around 30K, and then you moved a job and you got a boost up to 1 lakh, obviously with that increase in your pay, your patterns will change. Okay, So, but here the machine learning algorithm, it will be able to understand the change. That is the big point. It will be able to understand the change. How is it able to understand the change? Because if you're a working professional, your money is coming from a legal source. At least for you, you're getting the money from a legal source. If you're working in a big company or any company that is properly registered with the government, they will be filing, they will be filing these transactions. You will have a contract. The bank that is acting as the intermediary, it will also ensure that your money is coming from a legal source. Okay. So it is able to monitor the patterns, and it is able to make changes within those patterns. All right. And then now this is a very important point. It is able to examine granular data. So it is able to examine even the minutest information. Okay. And this is done to detect and uncover incompatible relationships. So it is able to uncover these incompatible relationships. What it means is that it is able to, you know, see that, hey, this person's spending habits do not match with what they're spending. Now, if you are suddenly come into, now, of course, human nature is always to have as much money as possible. So let's say, for example, somehow you luck yourself into some money, 10 lakh. Now, this is from an illegal source. Maybe somebody paid you off to push forward their agenda. Now, in order to whitewash this money, you can do it through various sources. Now, I'm not going to teach you on what sources uh, these can be, but machine learning algorithms will take a look at even the smallest data. Even if you're spending a small amount, such as 1 rupee, on something that you does not make sense for you, it will start recognizing that pattern. For example, you receive this money and you set up a smoke shop. Now, in that smoke shop, you are asking your friends and family to make the transactions, and you will give them money for it. Now, in that way, the money is coming into your account. Your 10 lakhs is coming into your account from a legal source. Okay. But your friends and family are all non-smokers. They have never had any sort of history of smoking. There are no transactions of them going to buy cigarettes or anything like that. All right. So AI and ML algorithms, they will be able to predict this incompatible relationship. And once they predict this incompatible relationship, they can find complicated patterns of money laundering. Now, this was a very simplistic example, but people who do money laundering, their way of doing money laundering is insane. Like people who are buying and selling drugs, the way they launder their money is insane. They are opening laundromats, they're opening salons, and they're pushing money through it. They are purchasing real estate through shell corps, like, fake companies and everything like that. So using these AI ML models, you have regulatory bodies that are responsible for overseeing, that are responsible for ensuring that there is no money laundering going on. They are able to make these predictions. And finally, now with the increase, you have reduced false positive hits. So what this basically means is that there has been a reduce in how many false positive cases you will be getting. Okay, how many times the machine learning is making the wrong prediction? If your machine learning is making the wrong prediction 50% of the time, now that is quite useless, right? You definitely don't want to be in a scenario where 50% of your predictions are incorrect. Okay, so now algorithms are achieving accuracy of 90+%. That means majority of the time, a really super high number of the time, the accuracy is correct. Okay, so with this increase, we have also reduced this false positive hits. That means we are no longer flagging wrong people for money laundering. Okay, so this is how it can be used in money laundering. Okay, all right. And then finally, we can use it to detect potential market vulnerabilities. Now, this can mean that you can protect your investment, or this can mean that you can, start investing in stocks that are, you know, bottoming out. Okay. So we can also use this to predict things like recession. Recession is a time of economic slowdown. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but one second. But people are predicting that we are going to be facing economic recession. We are going to be facing a global recession. Now, look at this. Most of the data is moving in the negative direction. The GDP growth projection for most countries is trending negatively in a major way. You have countries like Estonia that are going from nearly 5% to 1%. All right. So you have Finland. You're also looking at, these are all, you are looking at United States, that is also regressing. So that you have this. Then you have the unemployed rate. You can notice that as the pandemic hit, this is a post-pandemic recession. Okay. So you've had an increase in unemployment. All right. So these are the way, this is one way of predicting you will face a recession. People can take a look at various factors that are affecting uh, various factors affecting this, and they can predict that, hey, the market is facing a recession. Now, what happens in this? So when you're facing a recession, people are going to be scared to spend money. People are going to be scared to spend money because they don't know if they will get their money back or not. So, US stocks, the investment reduces. So this is a market vulnerability. The growth slows down. The GDP growth slows down. And your return on investment reduces because less and less people are investing in these stocks. Okay, so this is where you want to ensure that you are maximizing your return in one way or another. Okay, so these are some use cases. So with this, we come to the end of our first session. So today we have just introduced ourselves to financial securities. And we have taken a look at a brief on AI and ML. Obviously, we will cover in depth on AI and ML tomorrow. How do we build models, how the models work, all those things we will cover tomorrow. And then we have taken a look at usage of AI and ML within the scope of financial securities. All right. So, just like any other field you can come up with, there is a huge scope for AI and ML. There is a huge scope. Okay. So, we'll try to go through a few very interesting use cases to see how people are using AI and ML, and maybe this can sway your interest more and more towards that side. All right. So thank you everyone for joining, and I hope to see you all tomorrow.